1, 2, 3.
I believe in God, the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth. I believe in Jesus Christ, His only Son, our Lord, who was conceived by the power of the Holy Spirit, born of the Virgin Mary. He suffered under Pontius Pilate, was crucified and dead and buried. He descended to the dead. On the third day He rose again. He ascended to heaven and is seated at the right hand of God Almighty. He will come again to judge the living and the dead. I believe in the Holy Spirit, the Holy Catholic Church, the communion of saints, the forgiveness of sins, the resurrection of the body, and the life everlasting. Amen.
That's okay. Can I get a sermon? Sorry, it's okay from PowerPoint.
Ooh, we have the puzzle picture.
Sorry, you can regard this PowerPoint.
But how
We have a lesson plan right now, so I'm just going to...
Picture as that, right, Janina?
You haven't gotten the new one, so I can complete the story from last week. That's what I was planning on doing next week. You know what this is?
No.
Last supper?
Yes. I don't want to laugh. That's God.
So is that Jesus, the disciples gathered around the table?
Oh, the disciples is Jesus.
Oh, that's quite a group of people, isn't it?
Maybe
All right. Now, you know,
12 disciples.
Jesus was very smart, brilliant. He was brilliant. Just brilliant and loving. He was perfect. All right. And he gathered the people together, and when he did, he would often tell stories of long ago. And he would refer back to what we call the Old Testament. We call it the Old Testament. It wasn't called it back then. It was the writings of God. And the Jewish people, the Israelites, loved their life with God, even though it was very hard. So Jesus would refer back to that. He'd say, you remember that? And they would remember some of it, but not the rest of it. So we'd have to kind of tell the story again and remind them. So he did that often. Now the studies that we've been doing in, let's see, is it Joshua, Judges, and Ruth? You remember that? Joshua, Judges, and Ruth. See, the people had heard some of these stories and not others. And they weren't all written in one place. The book was still being formed. The Bible didn't happen overnight. It took thousands of years to write it and put it together. So sometimes Jesus would have to remind them of, okay, they weren't all called it back then, but it was Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Those are the 5. Then there was Joshua, Judges, and Ruth. And it's like the 5 big ones, Jesus knew that people needed to be reminded. Don't forget the old law, but also be sure to remember the others, like Joshua, Judges, and Ruth. So, the Judges and Ruth, which is what we've been studying, this is the period of the Judges. And Jesus was a judge. He was also a prophet. He was everything. But the Judges helped pave the way for Jesus to be king. And so when we studied the Judges, particularly as we studied the ones we've been studying, remember that they rose up from, some of them, from nothing. Even some of them were very bitter and very sad. Naomi and Ruth, we've been talking about, they lost their loved ones. They were sad and bitter. But then bitterness turned to joy. And so Jesus knew that the people knew some of these stories, and he referred to them. And he referred to a couple of parts of what we're studying here today. So, Joshua, Judges, Ruth, Judges, and then there's Deborah. We talked about Deborah. And then we talked about Naomi and Ruth. We talked about a lot of things in the last few months. But now we're wrapping up. Wrapping up means conclude, finishing this study by talking about Boaz. Is that his name? Boaz. He's kind of like the final chapter with Ruth. And they're getting together, and you've read I think some of you read the story. We want to conclude with Boaz, because Boaz was called the family redeemer. Now what does redeemer mean? To redeem, to bring back, to restore. I don't know how many of these words make sense to you. To help make things better. He was the family making better guy. And he had inheritance and land, but he didn't have a wife. And he was responsible for any of the women in his family who had lost their loved ones, he was one that had to step up and go, we got to take care of the widow. Don't ignore the widow. Take care of the widow. So that's what he's doing. Well, it turns out that, that Boaz and Ruth like each other. Okay? First, not quite sure what's going on here, but something happens. They do like each other, but more than that, they're longing for something more. And so here Boaz is longing for companionship. And here's Ruth, who's been very bitter, but is now being restored. Remember that word restored, brought back. See, Jesus came that we might be brought back to God. He's the great Redeemer. But Jesus knew about these stories, so here's a story of being redeemed. And here is Boaz, and here's Ruth, and they work things out where they finally decide to get married. And it's a long, involved story, but Boaz is the family redeemer. He has said, I love you, I want to be kind to you, and finally, I want you to be my wife, but we've got to check out one thing first, because somebody else in the family might get you as the wife, not me. And that's the law, see. So he was very loving because he wanted her. He said, but you know, we got to do the right thing. So let's see what happens over here. That person said, no, all yours. So they come together out of kindness and love and get married and have a child. It's a beautiful ending of the story. It's a hard story to get there, though. Bitter, hurt, angry, became kind, loving, and gracious. And that's because people cared for each other. They were kind. And they knew that they'd been hurt. And Boaz knew that Ruth and Naomi and all of them were quite bitter. They were angry and they were sad. He knew that. And he had anger and sadness too, but he knew he had to especially care for them with the love of God. And he did. He was kind and generous and not mean, not pushy, very gracious. Very gracious as the family redeemer. Not all the men were gracious back then, or the women. Some of them were very bitter and mean. But not these people, and that's the people of God. They're bitter, mean people all around us. And we're tempted to be bitter and mean, and sad, and very tough, and resentful. But no, there's a better way. It's the way of kindness and love, like the people in the Bible. So we learn that God redeems and restores. He loves constantly, and we mess up. We become bitter, mean, resentful over here. He says, I know you're that way, but if you come to me, I will give you wonderful things, and I will take care of you. I have redeemed you in Jesus. Come. I'm kind and generous. I'm loving. This is our God. Let us pray. Sometimes we're not kind and loving. Sometimes they're not kind and loving to us, the people around us. And that's hard, but we've got to find a better way. And to be kind and generous to each other, and to reach out and let go of what we always want and find the loving way. Thank you for loving us totally in Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you. Okay, so